Right. Right. So this is a quick recap to kind of look at the big scheme of where we are. So there are, here we go, a couple of topics that we look on in advanced computing, right? So remember we started out with graphics and we're finished with that. Every week we try to focus on some kind of cutting edge technology in architecture. And now we're on to filming techniques in architecture. And filming techniques is divided into two categories. You have the virtual camera and the physical camera, right? So we have been looking on the physical camera for the last couple of weeks, right? And we're going to continue with the physical camera. And the objective is that we're going to be done with that, I believe, well, in terms of the lecture after today. And it's going to culminate in a assignment that we're going to have, right? So if you take a look on the class website here. Head over to students and computing. And then we head over to advanced computing 2. AC2 2023. There we go. Right. So this is kind of where we're at. All right. So we did our infographics, right? And that was valued at 10%. So you guys finished 2 infographics exercise. We've been trying to plan to have a review for the last couple of weeks, but we're kind of being thrown off a little with the study tour. But nonetheless, we'll try to get through with that on a Wednesday, because that is best looked on a Wednesday when we have those 2 classes, right? Class participation is ongoing, so that's a 10%. So if you notice, these 2 assignments here add up to 30%, right? So we're going to be doing the physical camera assignment, and that's going to be coming up right as we finish the lecture of the physical camera. All right. So that is what we have coming. And in our recent discussions in cinematography, and we spoke about what is cinematography, and we kind of summarized it as the culmination of these 3 things. It is technology, which is kind of understanding the technology behind the camera, and we looked a little bit on that. We talked about different types of cameras, phone versus an actual camera. It's also understanding camera position and movement, right? So we started, that's where we actually were last week. So we're going to wrap up that today. And then it's also understanding lighting, and we haven't really touched this one yet, but if you realize that both of them kind of intersect where we talk about lighting, right? So whether you're on the technology side of cinematography, where, you know, it's all about the gadgets and those kind of things, or you are on the art side of things, where it's all about the perfect artistic camera angle and these things, both ends has to know about lighting and light, right? So these are some things that we looked on recently, and we talked about the camera, and then we went through rules of composition, and some of you
compositions come down to,
some of you participated, a minority of you though, but hey, it is what it is. It's up to you if you want to participate in the class activities. All right, we all are big people here. And we kind of looked on these rules of
with our
composition.
camera, we can
went
focus
outside
on
and took
subject,
some
making
pictures
that person sharp
to
and
kind of
the
mimic
background unsharp.
what these
we talk about having our
rules
subject in
were telling
focus
us. And where we ended on is looking at now cinematic camera movements, and we watched this movie, which was the one of the Houses of Parliament competition presentation, and we saw this very nice introduction that kind of spoke to
a place for gathering and welcoming,
how we can
a
combine
meeting place where stories
both the physical camera and the virtual camera, right? But this is a good example of the physical camera, right? And that's kind of where we left things. Now, I have some clips that I want to show you guys. These are some clips that I took myself, and every once in a while I will take examples of clips so I can show in this class, right? But we want to be looking on cinematic camera movements. So let's take a look. Are you guys seeing the video okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this was some footage that I took about 2 years ago, thereabouts, right? And it's a building that was being renovated, and it had a nice big yard. The yard had some features that was pretty cool. There was a lake. Because of the yard, it could be rented. You could play ball because you had all this space. And an interior designer redid the interior of this space. So these are some of the interior images. And what I want you to notice about this is it's about the camera movement, right? This kind of cinematic camera movement, and we're going to be looking into these. We're taking it one step further. Last time we spoke about rules of composition, primarily as it dealt with images, but now we're going to kind of move into moving pictures as it relates to architecture, especially with architecture, right? All right. All right, so that is about it, right? So these were done. It was a combination of my camera and a phone, and my phone as well, and that was what was used to put this together. This project was actually interesting because I took some videos and I took some images as well. All right, I have examples of the images here, right? And I want to just kind of break down some of these movements that you will see here, because this is going to be very similar to the activity that we're going to do, right? We're going to be finding a piece of architecture and we're going to be using cinematic camera movements, right? So just like how we use rules of composition, there is also, well, it's not exactly rules, but there are standard cinematography guidelines that you would normally follow, especially when you're capturing any footage of architecture, right? So there are a couple standard cinematic camera movements, right? And when I finish with this, I'm going to show you about the video And I'm going to ask you guys that are here if you can identify some of these that were used, right? Basically, what I'm saying is that you guys that are capturing any form of footage, like you should never just whip out your phone or your camera and just click record and it just looks hodgepodge and random. Anything that you record, especially as a professional, right? You guys are having your Bachelor of Architecture, you do all kinds of training ranging from drawings all the way up to art and rendering and cinematography and all of these things. So automatically when you're capturing anything, rules of thirds should be baked in your brain, right? Symmetry, leading lines. On top of that, when you're capturing anything to do with movement, the basic cinematic camera movements should be embedded in your muscles, so to speak, because you're using your finger muscles to hold the phone or the camera. And pretty much any movement that you do with a camera should be at minimum one of these moves, right? And it's up to you now to get like premium technology if you want to make the movement better and smoother. But even if you are not a cinematographer, remember I showed you some shots that were taken from a student that graduated from University of Technology, from School of Architecture. And in the images that you saw, you could see how these rules played out, right? So I have here 5 that we're going to go through, and 3 of them I'm going to leave you guys to investigate what they are. All right, so let's look at the first most basic cinematic camera movement.
When I'm out shooting nature style videos and I want to capture a landscape, and instead of just popping the camera on a tripod, I'll just give a nice slow push in that gives it a little bit more movement and makes things a little more interesting. It also helps when you can add people to the shot, anything that can create some more movement.
So, hold on.
To me, just brings it to life. I also like using this shot to open up a location or a video. This is probably one of the most common shots we use, but it really does make things more cinematic when most people would just stick it on a tripod.
So this movement is called the push in, right? And it's a really simple movement. And if you notice, most of these shots that you see here, they are like in maybe 5-second shots, right? So it's not one continuous long recording that's, that says, okay, this is the living room and then it goes to the bedroom, and it's these individual shots that are used, and each of them has a slight motion to it. Can you guys see that? Is it clear? Any questions?
Yes, sir. I understand.
Right. It's super simple, but even if you're taking a video for the purpose of, as I said, like you go on your study tour or you're capturing some footage, probably for your office, right? The same rule of thirds comes into play, but what kind of shot are you going to take? Are you going to be doing a push in shot or a pull out, right? Or a rise up? Like, these are the standard shots. Think of it like you're drawing standards. When you're drawing a view, is it going to be a plan, an elevation, a perspective? Like, these are the ways that you think, right, as a professional in the architectural field, right? So it's the same thing when you are capturing footage, right? You think to yourself, is this going to be a push in shot or pull out? Don't just take out your camera and just start to do all kinds of madness, right? Let's look at the pull
Most
out.
commonly used the pull out is to reveal something, like this case in Dubai, I'm revealing these awesome pillars. Or in the Snoller coaster, as this guy comes sledding by, I'm revealing all the people that are there watching him. Or when I reveal this lady holding the ball for Lords of Gravity to throw down with. So though I don't use this move as much, it's definitely a good one to throw in to mix things up and give it a new look, and especially when you want to reveal something. Number 3 is probably my favorite move that I love using more than anything. It's called the parallax. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm finding my subject, I'm keeping them in the center of the frame or in a position in the frame, and I'm...
All right. Before we go to the parallax, let's just finish out the pullout. This is essentially the opposite.
Pull out is to reveal something, like this case.
This is essentially the opposite of the push in, right? Now, even though these sound really simple, like think about a perspective drawing. A perspective drawing is really simple, but you can kind of tell when someone, injects additional effort in executing a perspective drawing. Or think of an elevation. An elevation is really a standard type of drawing, but yet still you can tell the difference when a person puts the effort and in drawing an elevation. And it's the same thing for your cinematic camera movements, right? So for example, even if you looked at how this pushing was done, like for example, look on this one. I want you guys to tell me, this one that you see on screen here, now this is a cinematic camera movement in combination with what rules of composition? So take a look on it and tell me.
Framing.
Exactly. So the reason I'm telling you this is that they don't exist in a vacuum. Like, it's not just about a push in or pull out shot and then that's it. You're still thinking about rules of composition in combination with these things. You understand?
When I'm out shooting nature style video landscape, just tripod, I'll just give it a little bit more.
All right. Now look at even this one that's here, right? That's this one. Notice, what is the interesting thing that you notice with this shot? Anybody? What is it that makes that shot interesting? What do you think? Anybody? What makes that shot interesting?
It's a reveal.
It's a what?
It's a reveal.
Well, not really.
And the horizon is
okay, continue.
the horizon is on the mid-third.
All right, cool.
So that island over there is directly on the 1/3. Top 1/3. So it kind of, you have that line there heading towards the horizon, towards the right, while the far horizon meets that.
Well, yeah, that is true. That is true. Anybody else? What other interesting thing you notice about this in shot?
Sir, it's the
The tree and the horizon creates the frame.
Okay, all right.
that
What
is
was
the
that?
use of the tree.
The use of the
The
tree
use
is
of
like the
the
most interesting thing.
yes,
All
sir.
right.
I'm not sure what the technique is, but I remember that. Well, like when you have another element in the foreground
Mm-hmm.
that kind of it's not framing, it's something, is another term, but I don't remember the term.
All right, good. Well, it also contributes to framing, but you guys would have used it a lot, maybe even in second year when you had to do the hand drawings. But even when you do your renderings nowadays, you might put a little tree in the foreground or something. You know what I mean? The other thing that so the tree is interesting and the island, and yes, the island is on the third. If you think about it, the tree is in the quadrant of one of the thirds as well. It's not exactly on the third, but in that third most quadrant. But the other thing is, where are you, PowerPoint?
Sir, is it the leading line? The lines that are leading to the tree?
Say again? Is it the one? The leading line?
Is it the poles? The poles that are leading, that are coming from the tree, leading to the tree? Is it a leading line? Kind of.
Well, that definitely helps. But it is almost like when you look on these shots, you can kind of put in priority which rule of third or cinematic camera movement takes what priority. So for example, rule of thirds is there, but is it like the main thing or is it secondary? You know, framing is there, but is it like the main thing? You know, leading lines is there, but it's like the main. So you can kind of you can almost put in a like, okay, the primary thing about this is this, secondary, tertiary, and so forth. So for example, when you combine that with when you look at the next shot, when you compare it with this one here, it's still a pushing shot, right? But it's a different kind of pushing shot. Like this one, the leading lines rule definitely stands out more than the one before. You follow me? Because you're actually like going down the road. You also have framing, and even if you think about rule of thirds, the rule of thirds isn't the dominant rule that's used in this particular movement. So your shots don't necessarily have to use every single one. But what you'll find out is that some of them just end up taking more priority because of the nature of the shot. There might be a shot that works beautifully where rule of thirds is the primary thing, right? When you establish that shot, then you can determine what is the best cinematic camera movement that goes with that rule of composition. So let me give you an example. Let's see here. Alrighty. I'm coming, guys. I'm just finding the picture to show you. All right. So let's take a look on this shot here, right? So this is an image that I took with a camera, right? And this one was taken with, and you know what, guys, anytime you see a picture, one of the great things about taking a real photograph is that the metadata is usually saved. So in this case, if I don't remember what I used to take this picture, well, I don't think I can find it in this case. Let's see if it saves the metadata. So I would go to properties, file info. No, it doesn't tell me because this was probably photoshopped a little bit, maybe. So maybe it overwrited the metadata that I had of it. All right. Anyway, so this image that you see here, when you see this image, then you would think to yourself, what cinematic camera movement would best represent what I'm trying to show here? So for example, I'm going to put this right here, and then I'm going to go back to this little thing I'm playing here, and I'm going to skip ahead to that part, which was, I think it was right about here. Keep going. There we go. So let me go back a little bit and go forward. So sometimes, so that is one. Let's look at another one, all right? So that was a push in. Let's look at another one. So these are all photos that were there. I think there was an image of this one. All right, so let's find the cinematic camera movement for that shot. Let's see if we can find it. I think it's this one. Is it that one? Let's see. No, it's not that one. Ah, there we go. Oh man, PowerPoint. There we go. So they're really short, they're not that long. We realize that this is a push-in shot. Now, this is a photograph that was taken first, right? And this is like two completely different times, right? Like they weren't like, it wasn't like a picture was taken and then a video was done. It was more like photos were taken a month before and then pictures were done pictures were taken long before and then videos were done like a month after. So what I'm trying to say is that when you have a picture, you're not necessarily using a cinematic camera movement naturally because it's just a stationary shot. But sometimes after you take the stationary shot, you say to yourself, you know what, this would be perfect if I did a tilt up or a tilt down or a push in or a pull out. And these are not the only types of cinematic camera shots. There are many more. But sometimes if you have this list of 20 cinematic camera shots, and you can easily be overwhelmed because you're not sure of, you know, what camera angle should I use. And this particularly happens especially with doing 3D animations. For those of you that are doing walkthroughs for your presentation, you know, it's in the 3D world where there is no cost to anything. So for example, you know, you can use any lens you want. You can make it any time of day you want. So you're just instead kind of bombarded with all of these options because you're playing God. But in the real world, like, you have these real world things that constrain you. including time of day, but also the type of camera you have and all these other things. So you end up have to break it down into steps. So for example, I would take a photograph first, look on the photograph, determine from this photograph what cinematic camera angle would be best used, and then do that after, right? And we're going to use this technique, and after you do this technique, you're going to realize that your renderings, your animations, and the way that you present architecture, you're going to realize that it has improved tenfold when you approach it from the physical camera perspective and then take what you learn over into the virtual camera world. You're going to find that your presentation techniques come out much better. So this was the initial photograph, and then this was the camera movement. Now I'm not going to ask you yet what camera movement are those. Instead, I'm going to just continue to one of the most popular ones, and that is called parallax. So let's take a look on this one.
Keeping them in the same spot in my frame, it gives it this look that they're not moving, but everything behind them is moving. And it's one of my favorite looks because it helps you focus in on your subject, but it gives you a ton of movement of things in the background.
So, for example, look at this shot here. This is an interesting shot. You can see that the parallax camera movement, it's kind of rotating around the subject, but then it's also moving with the subject as well. Can you guys see that? Do you see the orbiting with the camera? Or it's orbiting around? Any questions so far, guys? You following okay? Hello?
Yes, we're following. Well, I'm following.
Okay. All right, just making sure. So with this as your subject here, it's almost like this is the center axis of your camera. Now, in addition to it being the center axis, what do you guys also notice? What do you guys also notice? What rule of composition do you see in play here? Anybody?
The grid.
Right, but what is it
The
called?
rule of thirds.
Exacto.
Rule of thirds.
So even though it's using a cinematic camera movement, it is still operating on the rule of thirds just the same, right? So let's see. Press play here. You know, you can see how it tries to keep them on the third, you know, while the camera is moving, right? So it's just showing you how all of these rules are just layered on top of each other, right? Now, the parallax is perhaps one of the most popular ones, especially when you want to show context, right? So imagine you have, maybe you're doing a building, maybe your design has a particular vista that you want to show, and maybe you want to capture that in a rendering, or you want to capture that as an animation, right? Like the best way to show those vistas is going to be using the parallax, right? Because the parallax keeps the foreground stationary and then moves everything in the background. So if you wanted to show that, hey, there's a building over here and there's also a building over here, then a full like 180 or 360 parallax will communicate all of that while still keeping your subject in as the main element in your frame, right? Now, even though this one is like one of the most popular and it's one of the most interesting, it is a bit tricky to execute in the real world, right? And we're going to take a look on how we can do that with an actual camera, with an actual phone. If you went on study tour and you're trying to capture maybe an element in front of a building, maybe it's a statue or maybe it's a significant piece of architecture, but you also want to show what the surrounding areas look like, then the parallax will be perfect for that kind of shot, right? Because you get to keep that foreground while your background is rotating, right? It communicates a lot of information. The rise up, this is pretty straightforward.
At my brother's wedding, I wanted to replicate a jib going right over their heads, so I just pulled that glide cam straight up. It's a great shot that I like to use a lot of times for opening and closing scenes.
All right, so that is pretty straightforward. It literally, camera goes vertically up, and in a way, the rise up is typically combined with a reveal, right? So you can see
At my brother's wedding,
that
I
even
wanted
though
to
the shot is
replicate
rising up, this shot is also revealing the chapel for this wedding. In this case, you know, this particular piece of architecture is what they wanted to highlight as a reveal. Then also the next thing we're going to look at is storytelling, because that makes your shots way more interesting. I mean, if you think about the story that this is showing, it's saying that, hey, these two people were married in this chapel, right? Or is going to be married or was married. And the chapel is like the central thing that unites these two persons together. So it like the chapel is on a axis right where the bride holds the groom's hand, right? So there's like a lot of storytelling that's happening in this shot, right? All of this can be conveyed. And the interesting thing about this is that when you show your audience, some audience will maybe not look at the significance of the chapel being in the center. Others will just look at the significance of, oh, it's a nice shot and they're holding hands. Other people will maybe only see the chapel and not really notice these two persons here. Like, many eyes looking on your footage will come up with their own stories, right? But the idea is that your shot needs to tell a story. It can't just be a shot, or it's just be like blah. You understand? So, but that's going to be the storytelling part, which is coming up after this. But for now, we just want to learn about the cinematic camera movements, right? So this one is the rise up. And then now you have the reveal. By the way, is the audio in the presentation lower? Is it too low, or are you guys hearing?
There was audio?
Audio is fine, but your background music is still playing.
All right. Maybe the music is too loud. I don't know. Let's try to turn it down. All right. Let's see. Let's go with this one.
And I'll usually only use this shot if there's something looking upwards to glide against, like in those buildings or these power lines, or in this case, the birds just kept coming, so I never even looked.
So, for example, the reveal shot is very similar to the well, it's not that it's very similar, but these two are well, no pun intended, but like husband and wife, right? Rise up and reveal are typically used together. But a reveal can be anything. You could be revealing something by doing a parallax. You could be pulling out of a view to reveal something, or you could be pushing into a view to reveal something, right? So when you really check it out, you can combine any multiple cinematic camera movements together, right? And we're going to take a look on that now.
handheld camera moves for you using nothing but a smartphone. Camera moves that will instantly give your footage that high-end premium look and make any property stand out. But with that out of the way, let's jump straight into this tutorial with camera move number 1. The establisher. Okay, camera move number 1 is the establishing shot. Really important, this one, as it instantly sets the scene. Find some foreground, frame your shot, and then reveal it. I went for a slider shot with this one, but an up movement or crane shot works just as well. Okay, next.
All right, so did you guys see that? That's the reveal shot. And that was just with a simple cell phone, right? I want you guys to think about these shots and tell me your favorite one at the end of seeing all of these. So let's look at the others.
Then reveal it. I went for a slider shot with this one, but an up movement or crane shot works just as well. Okay, next up is the room establisher. Super easy, this one. Frame your shot, walk forwards. Move at a nice consistent pace and then slow your footage down by 50%. This creates super smooth movements, perfect for any room. Okay, the tilt down, push forward. A little bit more advanced, this one. Start with your camera pointing up and tilt down whilst walking forwards. Also, remember, with all of these camera movements, try to adhere to the ninja walk technique. Heel toe, knees slightly bent. This will ensure nice...
Right. Now, this is going to be the fun part when we meet on Monday, right? It's also going to be who is the better ninja. And we will know who is the better ninja based on how steady your footage will be, right? Though some people will have an added edge because remember earlier in the course I was asking those of you who had a Apple phone, right? Anybody in this class now has an Apple phone? Anybody? Or
An Apple phone, sir?
iPhone, sorry.
Yeah, I have one.
Right. So iPhone plus Ninja Walk equals nice smooth footage, right? Other phones have stabilizing capacities as well, but don't worry. When we try these shots out, even if you don't have the stabilizing capacity, we're going to try to tackle it from a software perspective as well. All right, so and that can help us to kind of smooth up our shots. Okay, so let's look at these other moves.
Toe, knees slightly bent. This will ensure nice smooth movements. If any of these shots feel a little long, you can always add a speed ramp. This really grabs your audience's attention and increases the production value of your videos. Okay, number 4, the door frame push through. This is an absolute classic and works in any property. Simply push your camera through a door frame and into a room. No need to walk with this shot, simply lean in using your upper body and extend your arms. This shot is perfect if you just want a quick shot of each room. Also, you can take this shot to the next level by tilting down whilst leaning forwards. This shot works great in tight spaces because it allows you to see more of the room.
So that is essentially just a push-in shot. Now, what you might also realize is that people call these shots different things, all right? Some places won't, some persons call it door frame, push through. Some person call it sliding, reveal. But what I'm showing you guys is the core of what they are, right? You have a reveal shot, you have a shot that pushes forward, you have a shot that pushes back, you have a shot that tilts up, one tilts down, and you have advanced version of these. You have ones where they are both combined. It's a tilt down and move forward. It's a tilt up and pull back. Like it's a combination of these standard moves. And if you are aware of these moves, then whenever you capture any form of footage, this is what makes your footage cinematic, right? Because you remember what cinematography is, right? It is the technology. So you need to have the actual phone or camera. It's a knowledge of the technology. It is also a knowledge of the art, which is the techniques, like what is creative about how you take the picture and take the movement. And then it's also about lighting, which we haven't really looked on yet, but we're going to touch that just super briefly because that I mean, people spend 4 years studying lighting for photography, right? So we're definitely not going to be doing a deep dive. But in the field of architecture, knowing these basics is enough to do a lot of damage, all right? And good damage in this case.
The room slider. Don't worry, you don't need a slider with this one, but we are going to replicate that slider look. Frame your shot, this works best at waist height in kitchen areas, and move your camera horizontally as smoothly as you can. This shot can really help give your footage that premium feel, as it's something usually associated with film and television. Use foreground with this shot to help accentuate your movement. Bonus tip, make it up. Take this shot here, for example. In order to do this room justice, I felt I needed to include the mezzanine level, the huge windows letting in all this natural light, and show off the sleeping area all in one shot. So I just made it up. I'm not really sure what this maneuver is. Push forward, pan, reveal, crane. The point is, you might just need to make it up. Experiment with tricky rooms and see what works best.
All right, so who can tell me what are the primary views? What is the primary cinematic camera movement for this shot? Somebody? Well, there's not much people to call on, you know. The primary cinematic camera movement for this shot here. Okay. Anybody else? What is the primary cinematic camera movement for this shot? Jessica? Nicole?
I have no idea. Push up, tilt down. I tried. Oh man, I tried.
Of course.
So I'm not sure. Probably the one that twists.
What is the name of the one that twists?
Your guess is as good as mine.
What's that?
So I call it the swirl. What is it?
Keeping them in the same spot in my frame, it gives it this look that they're not moving,
You're
but
looking at it
everything
now.
behind them
What is
is
it?
moving. And it's one of my favorite looks because it helps you focus.
Exactly. Remember so these are the fundamental guys. So remember, so the parallax, what it did is keep a subject in focus, and this essentially acts as a almost like a swivel. I think you said the word swivel, right? And so your shot is rotating around this swivel. In this case, the swivel is actually walking in this location. So this is even way more tricky. It's not like it's stationary like a tree or something. So this shot that you saw as an example is quite tricky. But
handheld camera,
this one that you saw here,
handheld camera moves for you using nothing but a smartphone. Camera moves that...
This one that you saw here, if you remember how it works, so the parallax, it keeps this in focus, right? And then you are really rotating or orbiting around that central element. So the primary movement in this shot is a parallax. But it's not only a parallax, it is also tilting down, because it's also a tilt down shot. So it is a parallax. It is tilt down. Forgive me, I'm writing with the mouse. And it is also a reveal. Why is it a reveal? Can anybody tell me?
Because it's showing downstairs, the loft area.
Exactly. So if you look at how this shot is framed up, right? When the shot was here, you weren't seeing downstairs. So what it's doing, it's revealing downstairs while it's tilting down, but it's parallaxing around this this post for the balcony, right? For the balustrade. So this is an example of a complex shot because it's doing all of those things, but that is the reason why this shot looks so good, because it is not just camera that's just moving randomly. It is a camera that is moving according to the rules or the guidelines of cinematography, and it is combining multiple cinematic camera movements, right, along with rules of composition, all in one package. And when you put all of those together, you get what's called a beautiful cinematic shot, and you just say, wow, that looks pretty, right? That looks awesome. It's kind of like those photographs that we showed about 2 weeks ago, where both of the photographs were the same angle, but one of them was special. And why is it special? And we started to break that down to tell you why it's special, you know, because it follows the rules of composition and all these things. So now we're breaking down why, when we capture architecture as video, why is it that you can make it special? It's because you are finding the right cinematic camera movements to go along with what you're trying to show. All right.
See what works best. The pullback reveal. Okay, we're getting a little bit more creative now, but this is about as far as you want to push it when it comes to property tour videos. Frame your focal point tilt down whilst walking backwards, keeping nice and steady. Use this shot to help reveal different areas in the property and create a bit more intrigue in your shots. Again, you don't need...
Right, so if you look at this one, so this is a pull out
different areas in the property and create...
Right, it's not just a pull out, because then it would be going at a consistent axis, local axis, but it is tilting down while pulling out. All right, so
create a bit
that's
more
what that is
intrigue
doing
in your shots. Again, you don't need to walk with this shot. Try just using your arms to create the movement. The tilt down crane. A bit more advanced, this one, but it's worth learning. We're tilting, we're leaning, we're sliding, we're combining multiple camera movements to create a shot that isn't seen often and can really add to the production value of your video. The worktop slider. Most properties will have a worktop, and if it's got an island, even better. Take advantage of this by using that worktop as a way of stabilizing your footage. Simply slide your camera along the surface and create super smooth shots that are a perfect way to show off any features in the kitchen.
Right, so that is simply a pan shot. It's just panning from left to right. That's really all it's doing. It just calls it sliding.
The hallway speed ramp. We deliberately want to shoot a long shot for this, and it's important to keep the camera as steady as possible throughout. We're going to push forward down the hallway and then turn into one of the rooms. Keep your movement smooth and consistent. Then in the edit, start in real time and speed ramp down the hallway and play at 50% speed as you enter the room. This is a great...
like a matrix movement. Pretty cool, right guys? That one requires a bit of skill in when you're capturing the footage and also when you're editing, right? So I don't know if we'll get to those techniques, but there's going to be a class on video editing. I mean, you know, basic editing. We're just going to cover what is a video editor and how does it work, but in order to use an editor, you need to edit something, right? So we're going to be editing the footage that you will be capturing for the activity next week. All right.
Way to give your viewer a better feel for the property's layout, whilst also giving your footage that next level professional edge. Okay, I've saved the best for last, the pro finish. This is one of my all-time favorite ways to end a property tour video. Crouch down with your camera low to the ground, use foreground, slowly stand up and reach as high as you can, holding your shot at the end for a minimum of 5 seconds. This shot creates a beautiful crane-like movement, rising up to reveal the heart of the property, whilst also leaving enough time at the end for you to add property information and contact details. So those were 10 camera moves as individual clips.
All right. So guys, so you see that even to do the basic cinematic camera movement, we can use things as simple as a phone to do that. Okay. Now, what I want to end with, 1 year we did actually have a drone technician demonstrate this, but they're getting more and more tricky to nail down, right? Because the drones, you need time for the person to come and fly and all of this stuff. But it was pretty cool when we did that. But this year, you guys are just getting a video, right? So I wanted to just show you the same techniques, but done now with a drone, just to show you that these cinematic camera movements is not just limited to Hollywood. Well, you saw that already. We also use it to capture architecture, and we can also use them with drones as well.
Welcome to the cinematic camera movements using drones, where I will be talking about some of my favorite cinematic aerial moves. A lot of these movements are going to be very similar to the ones I just talked about in the glide cam section, except now we're doing it from the air. Now, when working with drones, the most effective, most cinematic shots require two people, a drone pilot and a camera operator. As a cinematographer, I am the camera operator, and so I hire people on like Cinechopper or my buddy Colton Sandoval to come fly the drone because they specialize in that skill. And as the director, I will tell them the flight patterns I want them to fly, and then I operate the movements of the camera that then combine to create cinematic movements. Now, I'm not going to go super into depth about flying drones. If you want to learn more about how to get into the drone game, my buddy Chris Newman at Cinechopper University teaches a very similar course to mine that tells you everything you need to know about flying drones. So go check that out at cinechopperuniversity.com if you want more information. Cinematic move number 1 is the push-in. This is where the drone pilot flies straight forward, and as long as he does his job correctly, the camera operator shouldn't have to move anything after he's framed the shot up.
So you realize that it's the same cinematic camera movement, but now it's just done with a drone instead of with your hands, right? So I'm just telling you, I mean, this exists out there, guys, and it's being used everywhere. All right. That's what makes your shot look that much different.
You can see the drone pilot is moving straight forward, and me as the camera operator doesn't have to do anything as long as they're flying in a straight line. A way to mix up your push-in shots is by incorporating a slight drop or a slight rise to the drone movement, giving it a slightly different look. And here's an example of me pushing in until I reach my subject and then coming to a stop as if I'm just on a normal camera from the ground. Other things you can do to make your push-ins more interesting is having the camera operator slowly tilt up as the drone pushes in. I like to use this move when I want to reveal something, so I'll start with the camera down and I'll slowly bring it up to reveal my subject. The opposite of that can also be done by having the camera operator tilt down as the pilot moves the drone forward. And here's a few examples of times when I've used that cinematic movement. I like using it when there's people going over cliffs or ledges, like in bungee jumping or cliff diving. It's a great way to give the effect as if you are jumping with them. The next movement is the pull out. Same as the push in, but we are now moving away from the subject. And again, the operator shouldn't have to do much after framing up the shot. Here's a cool shot we got, pretending as if we were on the ground and then slowly pulling away. And all of a sudden you realize we're filming from a drone as we reveal the entire yard and landscape behind the home. Here's a couple more examples of times when I've used the pull out. Again, the camera operator doesn't have to do much on these as long as the drone pilot is flying a straight line. On this pullout, I slowly tilted up towards the end to reveal the cityscape in the back, and on this one I slowly tilted down as my pilot was rising so as to keep my subjects in frame. Here's a pullout with a left to right move, and as the camera operator I have to keep one consistent move of panning the camera to the right to keep the house in frame. And the key to making these shots look smooth is having a drone pilot who's flying smooth and a camera operator who's operating smooth. The third move is the parallax. And just like we talked about in the glide cam section, you have the drone moving one direction and the camera is panning the opposite direction. So here's an example in Panama of Chris flying left to right, and I'm panning the camera right to left to keep my subject in frame, and it gives the illusion like the cityscape behind them is moving as they stay in the same spot in the frame of the video. Here are some real estate examples. Again, the drone is pushing from left to right, and I as the camera operator am panning from right to left, creating the illusion like our subject isn't moving that much while the background moves around it. The next move is tracking. This is when you have a subject in frame and you can either choose to follow track by getting behind, lead track by getting in front, or side track by getting on the side. So here's a few examples of follow tracking subjects where we stay slightly behind so you can see everything in front of them. And here's some examples of lead tracking where we stay in front of our subject and track them as they come towards us. And then here's some examples of side tracking. And on this one I start out side tracking and eventually cut across to a follow track. And on this one I'm straight overhead tracking. The next movement is to have your drone rise while tilting your camera down at the same time, and the opposite of that, to drop the drone down while tilting the camera up. So here's a few examples of times when I've used this move. It gives a very similar look to the parallax, except now instead of going from left to rights and right to lefts, we're going from up to down and down to ups. And the last shot I want to talk about is what Chris Newman calls the twist and shout, which is when your drone pilot raises up and your camera operator, while looking straight down, will pan the camera left to right, creating a twisting effect. So as you can see, there's an infinite amount of variations and combinations of movements you can do with the drone. Hopefully that gives you a few ideas to get your brain thinking of creative moves.
Right. So what do you guys think? So, I mean, in these examples, they're using a two-pilot drone. Right? Most of the drones that we get from the store, like the Maverick and the Maverick Air and the DJI drones, they're one-man piloted. So you have to like control the camera and move the drone at the same time, right? But the more expensive ones, you have a second pilot that controls the gimbal with the camera and another one that just flies the drone, right? So but through all of that, you realize that it's the same basic camera movements, right? And you get these really amazing shots just from using these basic tools, right? You would be amazed at just using these basic tools, you don't even necessarily have to combine most of them. Just doing a simple push out or push in alone, but doing it slowly and balanced, thinking about the rules of composition, combining all that together will give you some very nice shots, right? So what we have done was cover the art side of things, right? So that one took about 2 classes because the art part of cinematography has to do not just with taking images, but also with taking video, right? So the next time we talk again, we're going to be looking into the lighting aspect, which is the final aspect, and it's going to be really short. So we're probably going to look at lighting and something else, right? But what I want to give you guys before we wrap up this class, right? Because it's not a really long class. So, but what I want to give you guys a preview of is I want to give you guys a preview of your third assignment. All right, which we're going to speak about more in the next class, but I want you guys to have an idea of what you're going to be asked to do. All right. So this is it. So this is going to be your third assignment. It's worth 15%. And it's going to be adapting filming and photography techniques for visualizing architecture using a physical camera device, right? So use a physical camera device to capture 5 to 10 second video clips of any building, interior or exterior. Each video clip must be captured using the cinematic camera movements listed below, right? Now, usually, there's a twist. We'll speak about this further on, because usually you get more points for the camera shots that you combine, right? So I'll be looking for you to combine at least two or four camera shots, right? So you're not simply just doing a tilt down, but maybe you're doing a tilt down and reveal, right? This can be done with any piece of architecture. We usually use the guardhouse at UTech, but during COVID, you can use any building. Some people use a shop, their corner shop. Some people use their house, a statue. Some people use other people, but it must be capturing some piece of architecture that you can fit within the frame. So don't try to capture like a huge building where you can't see the architecture, right? All I'm seeing is like a window. You need to be capturing something that you can experience holistically in the frame, right? So that is what it's going to be. But don't worry, I'm not going to push you out in the cold. We're actually going to use our Monday class that we normally talk about cutting edge technology. So I'm going to be carrying my camera, but I'm also going to be carrying my cell phone. So for those of you who have like a professional camera, then that's fine. And for those of you who even have a cell phone camera, I'll be demonstrating that as well. We're going to be learning how to walk like a ninja and how to hold your phone correctly. And usually I think we can get through it within the 2 hours of class. We'll work out the logistics on Wednesday. Where do we meet? We normally meet in the lab or meet under the tree. And we normally find a piece of architecture that we can all use. We do the activity in class, and that is your class activity. But the footage that you capture in class doesn't necessarily have to be the footage you use for the assignment. So for example, you guys are going on study tour, so you guys can use anything, whether locally or overseas, right? You just need to capture a piece of architecture that can fit in the frame of your camera, and you need to capture it using these techniques. So at the end of the day, you're going to be submitting basically 7 clips, 5 to 10 second clips, and they each must be labeled, right? And then we are going to move on to the next topic, which is doing a little bit of video editing. And then we're done with physical camera, and then we're on to the virtual camera. So that's going to be our next topic, right? But we're going to spend the next couple of weeks just wrapping up the physical camera. All right, any questions? Nope. You guys following okay? Do you understand? Say again?
It was clear, sir.
All right, cool. All right, so as we wrap up this class, what I want to do is play back for you the video that I played at the beginning. And I want you guys
question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anybody else has happened to, but I don't have access to the mirror board anymore.
Oh, right. Yes, because usually when I need to edit the mirror board, I will disable it. But usually we don't leave it editable because we only use it during class, so we never really use it today. So,
Okay.
So it will pop in and out.
All right.
So what I want you guys to do is to take a look on this video again and see if you can identify the different cinematic camera moves that we just spoke about. All right. So let's play that one more time. All right. Okay, guys. So that is it for our class today, concluding this chapter of the art segment of cinematic camera movements. All right. So Wednesday, we'll try to see if we can get through understanding the lighting section, which is going to be the smallest section that we look on, but definitely one of the most important. But we're going to explore the lighting both within the realm of the physical. Well, we're going to explore these same things: the technology, the lighting, and the camera position and movement. We're going to explore these three things again for the virtual camera. And we're going to see if it helps us to manipulate how we do things like virtual, like renderings and walkthroughs when we apply these same techniques in the virtual world. Okay. All right. So that is it for class today. I'm going to see you guys in 2 different groups again on Wednesday, and we'll see if we can fit in to look over some of the work that you guys submitted. I want you guys to actually see each other works, because there are some interesting submissions that we got that I want you guys to see. So good luck in your studio, and good luck in your critique tomorrow, and we will talk again on Wednesday. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. Bye-bye.
All right, cool. All right, take it easy. I'll put up this recording as well for those of you who couldn't make it to the class. All right.